Welcome back, Truth Seeker. Want to talk about the sentencing of Cesar Sayoc to 20 years in prison Monday, August 5th, 2019, and what this story has to do with the conversation going on at the same time about mass shootings and gun law reform. These stories are connected through a web of deceit. In October of 2018, you'll recall Cesar Sayoc was arrested in Plantation, Florida for supposedly sending mail bombs to political enemies of Donald Trump. And the media mocked us with those stories because they showed the package bombs that were supposedly sent to people, and they made it very clear that there was no postage on those packages. No stamps like the mail office does when mail gets processed. They made it clear that the entire thing was a hoax, and they put it right in front of our face. And myself and Dan Behrendt, we showed how it was a riddle synced up with the Austin bombings from earlier in the year, March 2018. Remember, those were blamed on a guy named Mark Antony. And the October bombing scares were blamed on Cesar Sayoc. Mark Antony, Cesar. That has to do with the Ides of March. After Cesar was killed on the Ides of March, he was replaced in part by Mark Antony. And Dan Behrendt and myself said, remember the date, the Ides of March. Beware the Ides of March. And then you ended up getting a mass shooting in New Zealand on the Ides of March, March 15th, 2019, with all the numbers coded all over it that were coded all over the Cesar Sayoc story. And we're going to review all this. But remember what happened in New Zealand. Gun law reform. Instantly, boom. Of course, New Zealand's a much smaller nation than the U.S., but like the U.S., it's part of the New World Order. And that story, even though it was in New Zealand, our politicians talked about it. The children from Stoneman Douglas High School supposedly traveled to New Zealand and spoke out about gun control and reforming laws. So that story was part of the ongoing narrative that we see in the U.S. about mass shootings and mental illness and racism and hatred, and how our politicians need to do something about it. So I want you to see just how scripted and contrived all of this is, and how it keeps going back to the same coded numbers that have to do with the Ides of March, which has to do with the assassination of Caesar, which happened at the time that the great empire was falling and crumbling, Rome. And what is the Rome of today? Is it not the United States of America? So this is the front page of CNN at this moment. I guess it's early August 7th right now. This headline went up late August 6th. 2 days after the Dayton shooting, 3 days after the El Paso shooting, which followed a series of other shootings, which has come on the back of many other shootings. And of course, all of these in the mainstream media have been contrived by a code for the sake of an agenda. Code we've been exposing nonstop for 6 years straight. See the stories they bring up here? Vegas, 58 dead. Special number there. And don't forget, yours truly for a year in advance told people to circle the date of that Vegas shooting. October 1st, 101, right after Yom Kippur. Said all year that we might see the biggest false flag in the U.S. on September 11th. Right after Yom Kippur, it ended up being just that, in Vegas. The Orlando shooting, part of a perfect pattern. The Sandy Hook shooting, part of the same pattern. These shootings this past weekend, part of the same ongoing pattern. Again, read my book if you have not. All of these shootings, except for the ones this weekend, are covered within it. Now look at the name Cesar Sayoc, the way they spell it, without the A that should be there in Cesar. Cesar Sayoc is the mega bomber who was arrested in October that foreshadowed the event to come on the Ides of March, which ended up being a shooting. Cesar Sayoc equals 109, like beware the Ides of March equals 109, like shooting equals 109. And recall, after the Ides of March shooting, days after, that's when Cesar Sayoc pleaded guilty. And now, right after these mass shootings, you get him being sentenced to 20 years in prison. This happened Monday, August 5th. 20 years in prison Monday, August 5th. Going to get to why. Why that date? By the way, Rome equals 57. He's 57 years old, like Scottish Rite is 57. Think about Washington, D.C., home of the Scottish Rite with all of its Roman architecture. All roads lead to Rome. This knowledge of letters and numbers and dates in the calendar goes back to the time of Rome and much further back to Babylon. Cesar Sayoc was arrested October 26th, and the day he was sentenced, August 5th, was 283 days later. Why does that matter? Because that's the 61st prime number, and notice Ides of March equals 61. Remember, Caesar was killed on the Ides of March, replaced by Mark Antony. The two bombings in 2018, or the two big bombing stories, Austin, Mark Antony, October, Cesar Sayoc. 283, the 61st prime, Ides of March is 61. Caesar, the actual spelling of Caesar, 61. Roman, 61. All roads lead to Rome. They called him the Mega Bomber. Mega Bomber sums to 58. What day was he just sentenced? August 5th. 5/8 like 58. Who did he send his bombs to? The enemies of Donald Trump, the winner of the 58th U.S. presidential election, who announced he was running from the 58-story Trump Tower, who hired the 58-year-old Steve Ray for Inauguration Day. Yada, yada, yada. Cesar Sayoc was arrested in Plantation, Florida. Notice Plantations 148 and 58. Talked about this the day it happened. Donald J. Trump 148. Look at the day he was sentenced. August 5th, the day leaving 148 days left in the year. Fraternal is 148. The day he pled guilty was March 21st. From March 21st to August 5th was 137 days later. Government's 137, mind control's 137, authorities 137, Washington, D.C.'s 137, morals and dogmas 137, Kabbalah and Hebrews 137, very special number, the 33rd prime number. This is a government operation. This is a signature number. It's the number that represents Kabbalah, which all of these rituals are performed around. Again, Kabbalah is where it's stated that God created the world with letters, numbers, and words. And that's why they do this day after day, because they are playing God over the masses. We're going to come to these numbers 101 in just a bit. Special numbers there. So just to go back, Dan Behrendt in October really helped me connect the dots with what they were quoting with Cesar Sayoc and Mark Antony. Dan Behrendt, very good at this research. Be sure to subscribe his channel. Do a search for that name right there. Brilliant man. Ides of March equals 101 and 56. The media put out his name for a while as Cesar A. Sayoc, which was 56, like the Ides of March. Then they arrested him in Plantation, Florida, 101. If you go back and watch my videos from October, you can see how they kept coding 101 in all their emphasized headlines. They reported that Cesar Sayoc was born March 17th, 1962, which was a date with 101 numerology. And, just to make the point, we were saying, remember the Ides of March when it comes around, and look at what they did on the Ides of March, March 15th, 2019. This shooting, the mosque shooting in New Zealand at Christchurch, the two mosques shot up. The one that was shown in the video was at the address 101 Deans Avenue, 101, right? And it was in the area known as Rickerton 101. Christchurch mosques get shot up. Notice the overlap with Rickerton and Christian. See the sick joke here? The other mosque was in an area known as Phillipstown, which is 61 like Ides of March, like Christian, like active shooter. You see how they did this? And the shooter supposedly He had a manifesto, The Great Replacement 101. His name was Brenton 101, Assassin 101. Think about the date of the Vegas shooting, October 1st, 10/1. Casino equals 101. Mandalay Bay Casino 101. Jason Aldean was performing. J's the 10th letter, A's the first, 10/1 like the date, October 1st. And as I say all that, coming back to this top headline right here, remember, Ides of March has to do with Caesar. And now here we are in August, the month named after Julius Caesar, Caesar Augustus, and we're getting, this type of push right now. You see how this goes? You see how ritualistically it's all themed? It's undeniable what they do. His nickname, Mega Bomber, also has Gematria of 193, which is the 44th prime number. Caesar was killed in 44 BC. Kill equals 44. Trump's the 45th president, but he's only the 44th person to be president. That's because Grover Cleveland had a split term, so he messed up the count. Obama was number 44, but really the 43rd person. So Mega Bomber 193, the 44th prime. Caesar killed in 44 BC. The Austin bomber, March of 2018, who was identified March 21st, 2018, 1 year to the day that Cesar Sayoc would plead guilty. His name was Mark Anthony Condit. 225. Notice from the Ides of March to the day that Cesar Sayoc was arrested was 225 days later. You see how perfectly coordinated these stories are? And the man who sent bombs in the mail was Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Look at his birthday, May 22nd, 22/5, like 225. The Austin bombings were a tribute to him. And the ritual continued with the October scare that was obvious propaganda. Again, mail bombs with no postage marks on them. Those obviously didn't go anywhere in the mail. The news media knows that they can put just the fakest stuff in front of the American people and they won't question it because they're so used to just listening to authority, following the instructions of authority, believing authority, trusting authority. This all comes from what's done to us in the public school education system, which isn't about educating us, it's about socializing us and programming us, as is the TV. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. The day that Cesar Sayoc was arrested, October 26, 2018, date was 74 numerology, Roman 74, Masonic 74, Occult 74, Jewish is 74, English is 74, Gematria is 74. We were talking in October about the significance of March 21st, the date that the Austin bomber was identified. Austin bombings equals 213. And then lo and behold, March 21st, 2019 ends up being the date he pleads guilty, just right after the Ides of March and the mass shootings in New Zealand. See how they do it? And Ted Kaczynski being 76 years old at the time, that's important. Because again, this ritual had a lot to do with Donald Trump. Again, Cesar Sayoc mailed the bombs to the opponents of Donald Trump. Donald John Trump 76, bombs 76, package bombs 76. Cesar Sayoc was born on March 17th, they said, which is the 76th day of the year. So here it is, March 21st, 2019, Cesar Sayoc pleads guilty. Again, 1 year to the day of the Austin bomber being identified as Mark Antony. Again, Austin bombings were 213. Here was the headline from March 21st. As police closed in on Condit, that's Mark Antony Condit, he detonated a bomb in his own vehicle. Yeah, how convenient. From the day that Cesar Sayoc was arrested to the day he pleaded guilty was 147 days later. Remember, Freemasons 147, conspiracies 147, U.S. President is 147, President of the United States is 147, police 147. Very special number. 147 windows on the White House. Number that gets used again ritualistically all the time. Case in point, the Aurora shooting in Colorado and the Sandy Hook school shooting, 147 days apart. And why does that matter? Because Aurora, it was a theater shooting at the Batman premiere in a Batman film where for the first time ever, the word Aurora was in the Gotham City skyline. And for the first time ever, in that film and in the toy map they sold with it, they changed the neighborhood in Gotham that had always been South Hinckley to Sandy Hook. They also said that one of the survivors of the theater shooting was in Sandy Hook at the time of the shooting as well. Just think of the odds of that, you know. Think of the odds. So anyway, there's even more to this. You know, if you want to go back and revisit all the work I did on the shootings in Christchurch, all of the information about the October bomb scares, there's a whole lot more to fill in even more gaps, but it's late, and I should get some rest. So I'm going to wrap it up here, Truth Seeker, and do appreciate the people who signed on at this late hour, so just want to make sure we get this information out there. All right, Truth Seeker, until next time, have a good rest of your day, your evening, depending on where you are. Take care.